Hello and welcome to this short video about childhood and looking at an essay question for 20 marks. Applying material from item B and your knowledge, evaluate sociological explanations of changes in the experience of childhood in the last 50 years or so. And item B says the March of Progress view argues that the experience of childhood in Western societies has improved in the last 50 years or so. In particular, families have become more child-centred. However, other sociologists point to many negative aspects of childhood today, such as childhood obesity. So, let's look at some of the key points on childhood. First of all, childhood is something that is socially constructed, so it'd be good to start with an introduction to define childhood briefly. Western childhood, according to Jane Pilcher, is based on separateness, so the notion that children and adults are in separate categories, biologically, physically, intellectually, psychologically, emotionally. And as evidence of that being a cultural, socially constructed category or definition of childhood, you've got someone called Punch who argues that there are cross-cultural differences, so looking at children in different places like Samoa compared to Western societies, different norms and values around childhood, children with more independence, children with more authority or decision-making power over themselves and authority over themselves. And this is different from the construction of childhood in the West as children being innocent and therefore needing protection, support, and children being potentially wicked because of their innocence and lack of knowing, and therefore needing control and supervision. Famous case that supports our concerns around childhood is the Jamie Bulger case, because a toddler was abducted by 10 and 11-year-old boys, and they had been watching horror films. And there was drink and drug abuse in the family home, and therefore was this concern about the decline of childhood from the New Right perspective, and childhood is even disappearing. So children and adults are indistinguishable, according to Neil Postman. Okay, so in terms of childhood changing, we can talk about the March of Progress concept, and we can say that there's this idea that over time increasingly childhood has improved. We've gone from a kind of nightmare childhood where children died young, according to Edward Shorter. Infant mortality was high in the past. Children therefore did not have close emotional bonds with parents. Parents may not even know the child's name and or give the child a name, and therefore there was these impersonal, detached bonds between parents and children, which has changed as time has gone on, and we've become more child-centred, and we've got lower fertility rates. People choose to have less children and focus more time and attention, devotion and investment into the relationship with their children. Philippe Aries talks about the centuries of childhood, so he talks about changes in childhood over time, and he says that there's been a progress from where children were viewed as little adults and they were an economic liability, expected to help out and work for the family, and they've become economically productive, helping out and working with the family, and they've become an economic liability, so there's something that we spend money on rather than generating money for the family. So we can talk about improvements in childhood in several ways. So child labour laws and conditions have improved. Education, age changes in terms of education, extending the period of dependency in childhood, improving the quality and choice of education, improving the child-centeredness of society, where there's a greater focus on the needs, rights and individuality of children. The Children's Act 1989 is part of that, where they put the welfare of children first in any consideration of the court following divorce and separation. So again, children's needs, children's health and well-being is priority. Socio-economic change, so generally industrialisation has led to greater affluence. People have greater ability to spend money on and invest in their child's well-being. Education, health, diet, nutrition has all improved, relatively speaking, compared to the past. Children increasingly able to make claims on parents. With consumerism, it enables children to have products bought for them and to become consumers themselves and make consumer decisions. This can give them choices, it can be fun, and it can be part of equal opportunities and rights. Although on the negative side, the new right would say that the commercialisation of childhood is a sign that children are treated the same as adults, and there's a decline in the kind of authority which created a functional division and hierarchy between children and adults. And this is not indeed a march of progress, but actually a decline. So there's many ways in which you could say some support for the idea there's improvements in childhood. So functionalists would say that as time has gone on, we see a more modern industrial society where there's a greater value consensus and shared set of values based on meritocracy. So the concept that we should fit someone's status according to their ability and their level of effort, and this has contributed to children having improved opportunities, especially from working class backgrounds. That we see a development of the middle class, according to Max Weber, who's a big influence on functionalism. He argues that the middle class will grow due to a process called bureaucratisation, where there's a growth of large-scale bureaucracies, and this will have a knock-on effect where it will affect the rights of children, because increasingly we need a middle class, we need greater number of skilled workers, which are middle class jobs, which are created due to bureaucratisation, and this therefore opens up opportunities for all children from all backgrounds in the education and class system. We can also support the idea there's been improvements in childhood from a liberal feminist position, because we could argue that many child abuse and negative effects of patriarchy upon children have been reduced due to legislation like the Divorce Reform Act, which has enabled women in caring for their children to end a relationship with a male partner. And it's given women greater rights and freedoms, and this has enabled them to cater for the needs of their individual children, rather than having to fulfil their duties according to a traditional patriarchal family structure in marriage. You could also argue for Geoffrey Weeks that same-sex families offer the new concept of friendship as the new family, like kinship. Being related to others becomes also influenced by friendship ties and a network of friendships rather than blood and marriage relationships. And this also enables children to be cared for by a greater range of people. This greater range of people could be seen as functional because it, according to radical psychiatry, people like Lang argue that the nuclear family is like a pressure cooker, puts a lot of stress on each individual member of the family to provide for the needs of the other members of the family. And so, in that sense, the ending of the nuclear family model and its replacement with diverse forms of family could be good for children, because, again, it gives them a wider range of socialisation influences. It enables them to be free from potentially stressful and overwhelming family types like the nuclear family, and being exposed to extended family and wider kinship networks. And so the postmodernist view is that family diversity, in that sense, can lead to equality and freedom and equal rights, according to thinkers like Anthony Giddens. And in that sense, there's progress in childhood in terms of enabling children to be able to make choices without being influenced by the traditional patriarchal nuclear family model. So I hope this has helped to give a sense of the kind of concepts that can be included. Thank you.